The HOA president actually called 911 because I dared to leave her precious little kingdom. But she had no idea my son was about to show up in uniform. Picture it. A Tuesday morning, my driveway, coffee still hot in my hand, the deep rumble of diesel engines cutting through our quiet cul-de-sac as two squad cars roll up like I'm a most wanted fugitive. Boots crunching gravel, exhaust hanging in the cool air. And there's Karen Whitfield, our self-appointed neighborhood dictator, literally bouncing on her toes beside her white BMW and stabbing a French manicure talon at me while shrieking, "Arrest him! He's destroying our community. His illegal fence is a menace." The same cedar privacy fence that passed 3 inspections, carries city permit stickers and aligns to HOA rules right down to the milled cap. The lead officer steps out, tall, calm, hand resting on his radio. Karen flutters a fistful of papers and hits that glass-shattering pitch that makes you want to cover your ears. And she's so busy performing the victim act she doesn't clock his smile when he sees me. Then he turns fully and my chest fills the way it only can for a dad. "Hi, Dad," he says. "Detective Cameron Torres, County Sheriff's Department. What seems to be the problem here?" And Karen's face goes whiter than the leather seats in her vanity plate BMW. Turns out when you spend 6 months filing false police reports about someone, you should check whether their kid is the guy who will read them. I'm Marcus Torres, 28 years a union electrician, a widower since last spring when cancer took Sarah in a hurry. The kind of woman who made bad days bearable and holidays feel like warmth. We bought our little Willowbrook ranch 8 years ago, so the kids could ride bikes without dodging potholes. After she died, I rattled around this house with Memories and Buddy, our golden retriever who still waits for her at the door at dusk like she might walk in anyway. The kids tried to pull me closer. Cameron's a detective, Alexis nurses downtown, Tyler's off engineering. But I could still smell Sarah's lavender soap in the master bath and wasn't ready to let that go. The HOA seemed harmless then. Cost $200 a year for mowed commons, a little playground nobody used, a clubhouse that hosted nothing. Keep the grass down, don't paint your house neon, no boats in the drive, basic decency, I thought, until Karen needed a hobby. She's been president 6 years running, 40-something, married to Preston, a real estate lawyer who thinks fiduciary is a magic spell, drives that white X5 with vanity plates that read HOA. I wish I were kidding. Lives in a 4,800 square foot colonial stuck in permanent renovation mode, and treats community standards like a blunt instrument. She cruises in her BMW with clipboard and ruler, measures grass, times sprinklers for restriction violations that don't exist, and takes thousands of photos of garbage cans 6 inches wrong and cars parked at slightly imperfect angles. The fence was the first big flashpoint, nothing fancy, just a 4-foot cedar so Buddy could wander without wandering off. Pulled the permit, got 3 quotes, followed the HOA book. And on day 2, here comes Karen clicking up in designer heels with perfume strong enough to trip a GFCI. Waving smooth legal paper like a preacher's Bible. "This fence violates our aesthetic harmony clause." I pulled my copy and tapped section 4.2. Under 4 feet, no approval required. Her nostrils flared. The rules are subject to interpretation by the board, which is HOA speak for by me. Then the phrase I've come to expect. 72 hours or 500 daily fine, and an emergency board meeting to change rules retroactively if I didn't cave. The fence became her obsession. 7 a.m. photos. 4 p.m. height checks as if cedar grows overnight. Then winter came and I strung warm white LEDs like Sarah would have wanted. Modest compared to the casino explosion 2 doors down. And Karen marched back, declared my lights excessive, and handed me a violation for breaking energy conservation guidelines that did not exist, but are being drafted, she said, which meant invented later. So I walked the neighborhood, her house, lights visible from orbit. "Henderson's?" Icicles everywhere. Malone's inflatable sleigh, visible from space. So I coordinated a little rebellion. 12 houses lit up simultaneously at 6 p.m. Tuesday. Hot cocoa on Martinez's porch. Kids laughing and Karen screeching around the corner to see a block choosing joy over fear. The next morning, the city inspector who got her fire hazard call, an old union buddy, Rick, stood under my gutter and laughed. "Cleanest holiday install I've seen." "Someone's wasting our time, Marcus," he added off record. "The complainant at our range filed 17 safety complaints on my street last month." The pattern was there. That's the day I decided documenting wasn't enough. I'd need allies, lore, and time. I started reading bylaws like I read code books, called the union legal line for consults, and began a quiet group chat with 12 households. Turned out I wasn't the only one Karen had decided to interpret. January iced the street in Karen's patience. Her leash law enforcement committee, consisting of herself and Martha Pembroke, a retiree who times trash cans like Olympic events, arrived with a hand-delivered notice claiming Buddy, the 12-year-old Golden who naps for sport, had engaged in aggressive off-leash behavior, i.e., stepped onto her lawn to fetch my paper while I stood 10 feet away. The leash law clearly states, she began, but couldn't show me where because it existed only in her imagination and on her violation stationery. $300 fine, $400 behavioral assessment, 14 days to comply. I smiled, hit record on my phone, and went shopping for cameras, not because of Buddy, but because 28 years wiring buildings taught me that harassment dies under glass. I installed a 4-camera, weatherproof motion-activated system that recorded only my property and backed up to the cloud. Monday's payoff: perfect HD of Karen trespassing to photograph Buddy's food bowl and measure his chain while her cat, Snowball, roamed 3 yards freely, stalking at Henderson's bird feeder, using Martinez's garden for a litter box. The hypocrisy a punchline on loop. 3 days later, Preston sent a cease and desist demanding I remove the privacy-violating cameras. Union counsel laughed and recited the state rule. On your land, pointed at your land, you're golden. And he wanted copies of Preston's letter, too. Saturday at the park, I hosted a responsible pet owners meetup. 15 people and a dozen dogs chased scent and swapped stories. Turns out Karen's committee had targeted the Johnsons' lab for barking during a thunderstorm and cited the Malone's elderly beagle for aggressive posturing when it wagged at a neighbor kid. Animal control investigated her complaints and found nothing, then accepted 3 counter-complaints about Snowball's destructive roaming. February thawed ice and illusions, and Karen pivoted from pets to plants. Spring brought her Beautification Standards initiative, serifed letterhead listing 3 approved vendors and mandating non-native ornamentals, imported stones, pro-grade irrigation, and $2,300 of improvements per yard by April 30, or $150 daily fines. The approved vendors charge triple, push species that struggle here, and required water use that violates city conservation programs. So I did what journeymen do: read the actual regulations. The city offered rebates for native landscaping: prairie drop seed, black-eyed Susan, little blue stem. I designed a plan with Jerry Martinez at the local nursery, veteran discounts, and organized a bulk buy co-op. 8 families cut costs 40%. The block smelled like mulch and hope and sounded like neighbors helping neighbors. Exactly what community should be. Then Karen showed with Preston and a landscape compliance coordinator in a suit that creaked. Your native plan fails traditional aesthetic standards, she announced, a phrase no bylaw features. The committee rejects your submission. What committee? I asked. You, I added. She bristled. I handed her a printout of the city's rebate program. Her plant list included restricted species. Her irrigation requirements violated municipal water rules. On Monday, the city mailed her a violation: sprinklers watering at prohibited times with restricted spray patterns, grass coverage exceeding drought guidelines. Poetic justice watered her azaleas and soaked her letterhead. In March, my daughter Alexis, the nurse, complained at Sunday dinner about hospital records requirements. If hospitals have to show finances to patients, she said, I bet HOAs have to show theirs to residents. State law agrees. HOAs must maintain records and produce them within 30 days. So I filed a formal request. 3 years of financials, contracts, minutes, and expense reports. Karen tried executive privilege. But my union attorney's demand letter beat the executive out of her privilege. The envelope arrived Friday, thick with secrets: 18 months of deficit spending. A $47,000 grounds enhancement with Preston's brother-in-law for work never performed. A $23,000 clubhouse renovation that amounted to a coat of paint and a new chandelier from a cousin's shop. Violation fees plugging the holes. And worse, our liability insurance lapsed 4 months ago. Karen had been operating naked while exposing every owner to personal risk. I laid documents across my kitchen table while Buddy snored. Line by line, the pattern spoke. The Whitfields treated our HOA like an ATM and manufactured fines to fund their renovations. The management company took a 15% cut from violation collections. No wonder they never questioned Karen's rules. In the insurance file, delinquency notices ignored. I made 3 full copies: attorney's office, fireproof safe, Jerry's nursery back room. Then I called the state AG's HOA fraud unit. Their investigator's voice sharpened at lapsed liability and relative-owned vendors. If Karen discovered my file, she'd escalate. Desperate people do. So I texted the Willowbrook Resistance emergency in the backyard, 2 p.m., bring chairs. 14 neighbors sat at my patio table, coffee and cut grass in the air. Dorothy Malone, retired CPA, leaned in. Linda Martinez, paralegal, took notes. I walked them through the ledgers. Dorothy whistled at the $47,000 ghost contract. Jerry identified 2 vendors as premium gougers. We drafted a plan. Stop feeding the beast. Redirect violation payments into a legal defense fund. Dorothy would finish a forensic audit for the AG. Linda would petition for emergency elections. Karen skipped proper ones for 3 years. Demand immediate reinstatement of lapsed insurance or face homeowner suits. Above all, document every interaction and record every meeting. I told them what job sites taught me. Corrupt people can't help but create evidence. Karen's obsession with my fence gave me the time to collect hers. We encrypted a group chat. Jerry offered his nursery for meetings. Linda made calendars our court exhibits would love. And we agreed on patience. Watch her lash out and be ready when she did. May's warmth teased everyone into thinking winter was the last hard thing we'd see. But Karen's escalation took hard from cold to scorched. She framed our native gardens as an extremist. Environmental plot on Facebook and warned about drought-resistant plants attracting vermin and undesirable wildlife, then filed yet another police report claiming I made threatening gestures at the mailboxes. My cam showed me at home and her nowhere near the cluster. She called my old union hall with tales of a neighborhood crime syndicate and demanded they yank my certifications. Our rep laughed and asked if organizing residents to read bylaws is now a felony. She called code enforcement with 17 complaints in a month. Lawnmower at 2 p.m. Zoning because neighbors visited my house. Dumping because I watered natives with a hose. Rick, the inspector and former Sparky, called to say she's abusing the system, and the abuse had a ceiling. Then she and Preston hired a PI to dig up dirt on my wife, my kids, my bank account. The former cop recognized my son's name from Karen's stack of reports and rang Cameron instead. Detective Torres, I was hired to investigate your father, he said. I've seen this pattern before. She and her husband run the same playbook. You should know. He had files on 2 other communities that matched ours. False rules, selective enforcement, private surveillance. Meanwhile, Karen announced an emergency HOA meeting to vote me out of the neighborhood, because apparently board power stretches that far in her mirror. Saturday turned the clubhouse into a courtroom. 47 residents, the biggest attendance we'd ever seen. Karen's charts and photos, my fence, my Christmas lights, my prairie garden, labeled threats to community values. Preston in a suit nodding solemnly. A compliance specialist lurking like muscle. I arrived with Dorothy's audit, Linda's binder of statutes, and a file of harassment incidents thick as a phone book. The local paper sent a reporter and a photographer. Karen hadn't planned for witnesses. This meeting, she intoned, addresses serious threats posed by certain residents undermining standards and endangering property values. She clicked through 20 minutes of melodrama. My cedar fence framed like a crime scene. Photos of Buddy's water bowl, screenshots of the native plant order as if milkweed were contraband. When she finished, Linda stood, hit record, and calmly explained that this gathering violated notice and open meeting laws. Dorothy stepped forward and read numbers. $47,000 to Prestige Grounds for invisible work. $23,000 to a cousin's outfit for paint and a chandelier. Inflated vendor costs enriching Preston's extended family. Violation fees propping up a deficit. Then the insurance lapse, 4 months naked. The room shifted, quiet outrage, then open disgust, as residents started speaking. Pet violations for beagles wagging at toddlers. The energy standards invented on the fly for my LEDs while Karen's house ran a transcontinental light show. The beautification requirements that required her vendors. Karen lost the room and dialed 911 on speaker. Riot situation. residents making threats, send multiple units. This could get violent. 47 witnesses, a reporter, and a camera watched her file a false emergency report. A minute later, the sirens wailed closer. The sound of engines and radio squelch filled the parking lot. 3 officers stepped inside ready for chaos and found folding chairs, coffee, and spreadsheets. The sergeant scanned the room and asked for facts. Karen leapt, pointed at me like she'd practiced in a mirror, and claimed systematic violations, intimidation, hostility. Then the second officer turned, grin lines at his eyes. "Hi, Dad, what seems to be the problem?" And witnesses will be telling their grandkids about Karen's face for 20 years. Cameron took Linda's file, read Dorothy's numbers, and watched 10 minutes of calm discussion on the recording. "Mrs. Whitfield," he said, "filing false police reports is a felony. Right now I have 47 witnesses to a peaceful meeting and a pattern of false calls you've made for 6 months." "This is a setup," she cried. "You're all conspiring." Preston tried misunderstanding and concern for safety. Cameron kept his voice even. "Ma'am, you called a riot." "There is none. There are, however, documented false reports and an audit showing you used fines to cover deficits created by inflated contracts to your family. You're under arrest for filing a false report." He read Miranda, cuffed her, and walked her past the neighbors she'd bullied for years as the reporter scribbled like his life depended on it. And someone cheered from the back in a whisper. About time. The weeks after the handcuffs clicked felt like watching a neighborhood wake from anesthesia. Groggy, blinking, then suddenly wide-eyed. The DA charged Karen with multiple counts: false reporting, harassment, and the first round of fraud stemming from Dorothy's audit. The state bar sat Preston down hard and he lost his HOA contracts. Within 60 days we held an election, Dorothy as HOA president, Linda as treasurer, a bonded licensed management company hired, and a resolution to stop being ridiculous. The new board's first acts: reinstate lapsed liability insurance, publish accurate budgets, audit 3 years of expenses, refund fraudulent fines with interest, my LED energy violation, Buddy's aggressive tail wag, my non-traditional native garden. Every penny came home. The Saturdays felt different. The sound of kids playing at the park replaced Karen's heel click at 7 a.m. Jerry handed out native seedlings at a neighborhood plant exchange. The Hendersons installed a little free library where Karen's violation box used to hang. The Johnsons started a tool share so nobody had to buy the same hedge trimmer twice. We held what Dorothy named the Unity BBQ in my backyard. 38 families, covered dishes, and stories that sounded painfully similar until people realized they'd been alone only because someone told them to be. Buddy wandered from lawn chair to lawn chair collecting pets and crumbs without a clipboard in sight. Cameron swung by and turned a cop's eye to grill duty. Alexis set up a blood pressure station. Nurse can't help it. Tyler fixed a neighbor's flickering porch light by muscle memory. The new board created the Sarah Torres Memorial Scholarship with money saved by dumping inflated vendor contracts. 3 students got the first checks: trade school, nursing, and engineering. I started teaching electrical safety at the high school on Thursdays. Turns out explaining neutral and ground to teenagers isn't so different from explaining, "No, that's not in the bylaws," to adults. The city held a community safety day at our clubhouse. CPR, home security walkthroughs, code-compliant holiday lighting. Rick promised to print me a certificate. Cameron spoke about working with police instead of at them. Karen's case dragged as cases do, but she pled 6 months in county, 2 years probation, 400 hours community service, restitution to the HOA, and a 10-year ban from board service. Preston lost his license for a year and paid $50,000 to the bar. 3 other neighborhoods surfaced, each with the same Whitfield playbook: false rules, violations for revenue, vendor kickbacks, and our documentation helped prosecutors and insurers recover money for hundreds of families. The management company's insurer settled for $125,000 in our case and paid out to others when evidence piled up that they'd looked away from fraud as long as the violation checks cleared. Not everything became sunshine. We had tense council meetings about how we'd allowed this to happen. But people showed up, asked smart questions, and stayed until answers landed in the minutes. 6 months after the arrest, I got a call I didn't expect. Dorothy asking if I'd like coffee that wasn't at a folding table with a calculator. Grief teaches you not to look at clocks. We walked slowly, Talked about budgets and gardens and spouses we'd loved and let time do what it does when you stop telling it what to be. I still hear Sarah when I pass the lavender soap aisle. Dorothy doesn't try to fill that sound. She sits with it, which tells me more about a person than 100 speeches. The neighborhood now uses bylaws like a recipe book instead of a weapon. We write clearer policies. We vote on things that matter. We leave each other alone about holiday lights unless it's a genuine hazard. The management company now earns a flat fee, no more 15% of violations. And we do the boring adult things that communities either learn or pay for. Reserve studies, service bids that don't include in-laws, open minutes, posted budgets, and Zoom links so shift workers can speak. You'd be amazed what happens to property values when the nastiness gets replaced by mutual respect and paperwork. That makes sense. Also, when a detective's hi dad becomes a cautionary tale all by itself. By the first anniversary of Karen's arrest, Willowbrook felt like the place Sarah wanted when she circled the listing with her pen. The block party had more toddlers than clipboards. The HOA's financials fit on 3 pages and not one cousin got a contract. A high schooler fixed the clubhouse Wi-Fi as a service project instead of the board hiring a consultant for $3,000. Jerry's native plant class filled twice. Buddy held office hours as neighborhood therapy dog. The Unity BBQ grew into a seasonal rotation. The scholarship fund doubled. The new management company answered calls without threatening fines. Violations were rare, boring, and actually in the rules. And the paper ran a follow-up. Neighborhood rebuilds after HOA scandal, from fines to festivals. The best line quoted a resident who'd once signed Karen's complaints. "I didn't know how to say no, I do now." The lessons are simple enough to write on a shop rag. Document everything. Read your governing docs and your state statutes. Insist on open meetings and posted budgets. Follow the actual law and not whatever someone says it says. Don't pay fake fees. Redirect energy into a legal defense fund if you must. Find a Dorothy to audit and a Linda to file and a Jerry to grow. And coordinate. Corruption thrives where neighbors don't look up and greet each other. It dies under sunlight and in group chats with receipts. If you're in the middle of your own mess, hear me. You're not fighting alone. Someone on your block is tired too. Find each other, set a table, share coffee, collect facts, and speak in one voice. The click-click of designer heels never beats the steady rhythm of 50 feet walking to a vote. Drop your HOA nightmare below and where you're watching from. This channel's comment threads have become a library of strategies and a reminder that ordinary people can defeat petty tyrants with clipboards. Smash that subscribe button if you want more true stories about standing up to corrupt authority and winning through persistence and principle. Next week, how a neighbor tried to steal my late sister's inheritance with a forged quitclaim deed and ended up losing his own house when the county recorder and a forensic doc examiner got involved. Because apparently some people never learn that crime doesn't pay, especially when the victim knows how to aim a camera and read the fine print. For now, I'll leave you with Sarah's rule I write on the first page of a new notebook every January. Be the neighbor you wish you had. Be the adult in the room. And always keep a copy. See you on the next one.